So Kenmore City Council is now in session. We're going back into our retreat and goal settings. We will be having 2 breaks and a lunch during the course of the meeting. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Michael.
Okay, thank you. Going directly to the agenda, the first item on the agenda for discussion.
And one thing, all council members are present.
Is Lake Point. So I'm assuming there'll be a bit of an update and then a discussion based on that.
Sure, do you mind if I take
Please.
that? And Nancy and Brian, feel free to jump in. So you may know that, and more than may know, you know that on November 1st, Widener sent us a letter suspending discussions. That didn't necessarily negate the permit extension agreement that we had. So we still felt that it was our duty and obligation to send them our draft of the parameter agreement that you directed. So we did. A couple weeks after the suspension agreement, we still fulfilled our obligation by sending them a draft parameter agreement. And we've also been trying to bring Mr. Widener back to the table. I don't know how successful or if that will be successful, but we did hear from a representative of Lake Point just this week that they're going to send us a letter responding to our parameter agreement that we sent them, and we should probably get it next week. I'm not sure what the letter will say, but it'll probably say something like the parameter agreement you sent us does help close the gap in some ways, but it makes the gap wider in others. And so it'll say something like that in their letter, I'm guessing. So we'll see what that says, but and we'll see what to what degree that letter brings Widener back to the table, if at all. And if it does, then it might be good for us to continue negotiations. They have a month and a half left on their purchase and sale agreement before it expires on the property. So if Widener comes back to the table, we could keep negotiating with them. If not, and even before we know, I think we should start working on a plan B. And one thought on a plan B is to do what we call a request for proposals and open up what we were willing to offer Widener to the rest of the development world. And so we would partner with the property owner and probably have to do an agreement with the property owner that talks about roles and responsibilities of partnership, where the two of us, the city and the property owner, go out and do a request for proposals. And probably would need to get a broker involved in order to access the network of other brokers and developers out there. So we haven't thought that RFP process through in detail yet, but that's kind of what we're thinking for a plan B.
Okay. Discussion. Brett.
So the letter that Widener will respond with, it'll be a letter, it won't be a parameter agreement counter.
I don't think so. I'm hearing that it's going to be a letter.
So to me, just, from a practical standpoint, the process was to have a parameter agreement and then work our way to a development agreement. If he doesn't respond to our parameter agreement with a counter parameter agreement, it seems like the ball's still in his court. And it does seem like if we're dragging him to the table to convince him to do this, that's a no-win situation for us.
And I think the RFP is a great idea because it'll invite all kinds of different proposals and parties to look at the possibility for the site.
Okay, Milton and then Nigel.
So my thoughts are sort of high level thoughts. So this is like the 12th developer more or less who's looked at this, and it hasn't worked out for different reasons over the years. And it seems like the last one was maybe 12 or 14 years ago. And I remember the mindset at that time is this developer has lots of money and they're gonna come in and they're gonna save the city and they're gonna do this cool thing and we can stick with all kinds of extra costs. Extra road, extra bridges of pedestrian bridges over 522, and because they're gonna have lots of money and they're gonna be able to do this. A developer needs to make money or it's never gonna happen. There'll be number 13, 14, 15, 16. And I think personally, this is my view on it, that we need to change our view and say, what do we need to do to make this project more likely to succeed? And honestly, I read through those P suffixes. No developer in their right mind should ever develop this property. So the P suffixes were developed with the development agreement by King County. So King County had a bigger set of resources than a small city like Kenmore. So I don't think it's the same situation it was 22 or however many years ago. That whole thing was structured.
Well, and the P suffixes were written for a specific project.
Right. A specific project with the development agreement that kind of went along with it. And I just think the world has changed. So somehow it feels to me like we need to be thinking about how can we prep this project. It's private property, but it's really important to our city. It needs to turn into something valuable. I would feel like we let our citizens down if in 20 or 50 years, that's still an industrial site. I would feel like we've failed Kenmore. So what can we do to prep it? What can we do for infrastructure? You know, special taxing districts, agreeing how we can help in ways that are legitimate and benefit the city. If that thing develops, we will have tax income and revenue coming in. We can give part of that back for the development, whether it's for streets or roads or whatever infrastructure is needed. But somehow it feels to me like we need to think about it from scratch instead of carrying all this baggage along. It isn't working. If we keep doing what we've been doing, is I think going to continue to not work. Also, I really think we need to be. It feels a little weird to be working with the developer instead of the owner. The owner of the property somehow needs to be at least part of a triad. It's like he's the one that's most interested in selling the thing and making his profit. And he has a vision for Gary started, and he has a vision for wanting to see this develop. So how can we, somehow he needs to be part of the equation instead of he's a third party back there somewhere. And I think we need to get him a little more involved. So those are my high level thoughts. I'd like to see us go a different direction going forward.
Okay, Nigel, Stacy, and Brent.
I kind of agree with Milton to some level. I think we are kind of carrying baggage from, the mid-90s on this project. We went through, King County went through the visioning process and there was the Starship Enterprise proposal that we've all seen in Gary's office. And I think we've been so tied to this idea of a big development that's all we're looking at. And I really think that maybe it's time to, it's been 25 years. Maybe it's time to reset, go back to square one and really talk to our public again, because Kenmore's changed a lot in the last 20 years. We've grown, we have different needs than what we had back then. Maybe it's time to kind of do another public process and say, hey, what do we want there? And then work with the property owner to figure out how we get there in a mutually beneficial way. Because maybe something different than what we were talking about 20 years ago.
Stacy, Brent, and Deborah.
Yeah, my comments have been mostly said. So yes, I do believe that before we went out for any kind of request for proposal, we should look at prepping the property as much as we can. If we want to keep some of the P suffixes because they're still really important to us, great. If there's some that we get rid of, just kind of really look at that and make sure that it's the property to make it in the taxing districts and all that. And I do kind of agree, like if this one falls apart with Widener, We really kind of should take a little bit of a pause and get some public feedback, because, yeah, it's been a long time. since it's happened.
Yeah, Brandon and Deborah.
So these comments are perfect for what I was thinking, where I wanted to go with this, and that was that, I took some notes on how to be a little more chronological here, but I'm thinking this just, again, kind of a high level idea like Milton's talking about, that if we develop kind of a strategy and a scope to remove the P suffixes with the understanding with the property owners that by this elimination, we're going to create value for them and for us, because they obviously want to make money and they want a profitable development. We want to get rid of industrial use there. We want open space. We want not a traffic nightmare. And there's things that we can do working together. And so, so you work to eliminate the P suffixes, and then maybe you create a specific district, taxing district or some development district. I know there's some different things we've talked about in the past. And then involve all those stakeholders in creating this plan and the community. And then we specifically define what we want. What are the very specifics about what we want to see happen there? And it could be significant open space. It could be not much more than or similar to what's in the CSDP. I don't know, but we can define it. And with that, we make an investment into that property or an ownership stake in what we want. And because of the toxics on the site and everything, maybe it's leased land, so we're not on the chain of title somehow, or we can somehow indemnify our liability. But we are really upfront about what we want, and in return, we create a scenario where the development that would maybe happen more likely upland or inland is maybe it's not a traditional RV zoning, but maybe we can do or make allowances that we wouldn't have thought of originally. But it benefits the property owner because it scales back their scope of the horizontal scope of their development, and it takes away some of the risk on the unstable land development. And then with that, we can also at the same time identify what specific things, which we already worked through a lot of them, we could work towards on impact or permit fee rebates or things to help make it more feasible or to help pay for the portion that we want. And I think it'll still have great appeal for the property owner because that means there would be great public space between the development and the lake. And so what developer wouldn't want property right along that? I'm almost done here. And then I think the most important part in all of this is to have the property owner a true partner at the table, because Gary Sargent, we all know his name. I've met him 3 or 4 times in my life, but he's not an active participant. I'm not saying he should have been, but I'm just saying he's not. And I think this has to be a real partnership in order for this to work. Because if you're going to go into the process of changing P suffixes, I don't think we should do it unless we get some public benefit with that, because they're clearly going to have a public or a financial benefit by eliminating. So that's, thank you for patience on that.
Yeah, thank you. Deborah.
I think everybody's probably said it. In particular, I just want to make sure before we go to the RFP, we do the public process, so that the we becomes, we as representing a community more currently than 25 years ago.
Joe.
I agree with the public process. And have we done the RFP on this before? I take no.
Never.
Okay, so the one thing that makes this then utterly different, in addition to what we're trying to anticipate as being different from the prior process, and that what I'm hearing is people are saying, okay, let's revisit the P suffixes. But the other thing that makes it utterly different than an RFP, or with an RFP, is instead of just dealing with, of course, with one other party the whole time or negotiating with one other party, you turn the competitive process to your advantage. And there's a number of people, they're trying to put forth their best ideas. They're competing with each other for all their visions and what they can do for the city, for the public. So I think that is a significant difference that we gotta acknowledge.
Milton?
So to me, it seems like for us to put out an RFP when we don't own the land doesn't make any sense to me. It feels like if an RFP is going to go out, it has to be Gary Sargent with us cooperating.
Yes.
I agree.
That's, maybe Rob can flesh that out a little bit more for the.
Yeah, that's fully what I see happening. So before we would do an RFP, we would need to do an agreement with the property owner that talks about what we're willing to do, what he's willing to do, who's paying for what. A commitment from him that he won't enter into long-term leases or sell the property during the RFP process. How do we decide? How do we choose the developer? Things like that.
Stacy?
Yeah, we might want to get a developer in our process before the RFP as well, just to make sure we don't get some vision that will never ever pencil out and we just come back to the drawing board, so. Cool.
So along those lines, so this reminds me of Kenmore Village. So right before I got here, you guys the city was just ending a 5-year-long relationship with Urban Partners. And so that was one of the first things I was tasked to do with my coworkers is we were just supposed to figure out what's next. And so hired a guy named Rod Stevens, I don't know if you remember him, but he was really helpful through the process as a consultant. But what we did is we did do a brief community process on what do we want for our downtown. And it included a developer expert panel. I don't know if you guys remember the July of 2012 in the parking lot right there in front of the old liquor store. We had a developer panel. Yeah.
It's a hot day.
It was,
Yes,
yeah. But we decided to have it on site outdoors, and we had this developer panel come and talk to us and kind of just really speak frankly to us about the site and what its limitations are and its potential and stuff. But based on that and the town hall meetings we had and everything, we came up with what we call a position statement. It was a 1-page position statement for Kenmore Village. I guess you can call it a vision statement if you want. We came up with a position statement on what are the main things we want to happen for Kenmore Village. And then with that vision statement, we then did an RFP. We listed the properties and we had developers come in and submit proposals. We got 12 different developers offer proposals for Kenmore Village. And we interviewed them all and selected a couple. And so, but just know the fundamental difference is we own the land.
Yeah,
We own the land. So if we were to do something like that, I'd want Gary Sargent in on it from the beginning.
David and then Deborah.
Yeah, I guess that was my point. The difference was we own the land, we don't here. And I don't want it to be seen that we are telling the developer what to do on his property. We ran into that problem a number of years ago with Kenmore Village, where when the designs came out from the task force, there was no stone shrub, there was no this, there was no that, and there was a huge public outcry. So, yeah, the guy, the owner of the property has to be involved, and we have to take the wishes of the public into consideration.
Deborah?
One thing that we had talked about, I think it came up already this morning, as part of the public process, if Gary's willing, to have a kind of a public walkthrough day. Could be part of the developer forum, but I think maybe before that, but, so that the public, when they're having input, could be more informed about the site. I personally never walked the site. I've never been able to access it. So I don't know, I think it'd be instructive.
It's really eye-opening actually to get on the property, take a look. I got a tour once from Gary right after I was elected. And then when Washout was there, I got a tour of what they were doing. But it's a different perspective actually. on that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then,
I also think we have to be careful because right now, it is under purchase and sale from right now.
Well, this would be after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If he lets it go, yes.
Yeah.
so he can still sell it to him and he not be a part of this?
Or he could not complete the sale and not be part of it. Because it's on a purchase and sale, purchase and
Well, it
sale.
expires in February.
He's doing due diligence right
So I think he needs to have, and this gets back to his involvement, I think he needs to have some level of skin in the game. Because I feel like there's a distance there and it's easy for him just to turn around and walk away. And there has to be some way to have him have an interest in it. So every time something doesn't go his way or something he doesn't like, he doesn't threaten to pull out, or whoever the property owner is. Because that's what's so easy to do unless you have an incentive to be a participant at the table. And so I don't know what that skin in the game is, but I think it has to be financial or it has to be something. And we've seen it even on the heavy industrial use, on the non-conforming uses on the site that go on. It's not always, they're not always upfront and honest with us about what's going on. And so if you're going to build trust in a partnership, you have to, it requires two parties. It's not just us. So I think it's really important. I feel like, to me, that's almost more important than anything else, is to know that he really wants to work with us. Because if he doesn't,
He being Gary Sargent.
Gary or whoever the property owner is, I
Right.
shouldn't say he, whoever, they, whatever. And so, and then another component I do think is the expiration or termination of the non-conforming use. Has to be somehow a part of this, because if the backup plan, like we like to have a backup plan on everything we do. Well, if his backup plan is always, I'm just gonna lease it out, continue this use that I've been doing, well then that's a income stream we can't compete with, and we don't even think it's legal. And so I think that has to factor into how that this relationship of trust comes together. And when you look, I pulled up what that site's assessed in 2017. Its total assessed value is $6.4 million. The property that, basically he had under contract for would be $40 million. And so they're making an argument that this is, to the assessor, that this is a wasteland that can't be developed. That's his argument on the taxing end to the assessor, and to the developer, it's, I get 40 million because this can be developed. And in the interim, everybody's running around while he's got his cash flow to factor. That, clearly if he's getting millions in cash flow on an annual basis, even from an income stream perspective, it's worth more than 6.4 million. So there's a lot working against us from his end, and he wants to be a partner, he needs to be a true partner, I think.
Okay. Other thoughts or comments? So is there a next step in here?
Well, I'm just thinking about sergeants. Yeah, so I don't know how willing he is going to be on a lot of this stuff, because he went through all this in the 90s. He went through the visioning and the task force, and every time I bring something even remotely similar to that, he just rolls his eyes and goes, "Done that before. Look what it's gotten me." I think him and the other trustees to the property are motivated to sell. And I've seen that, and I've been able to gauge that they're motivated to sell. I think they're also comfortable getting the leases that they're getting on the property. But I think there is a motivation to sell. I think that the heirs and the trustees are ready to
to sell.
Deborah, and then
But I think that's the point. They're ready to sell, they want to sell. So, I mean, to me, the selling point of this strategy is that nothing has happened. He has not been able to do this, to get to his goal in the last, 20 some years, right? So we have an idea from the developers, including Widener, of how to facilitate that process going forward, having not an extended public process, but a revisiting of what the public wants. And doing a competitive RFP, which can only benefit the process. And having an idea, much clearer idea of what the city can bring to the table. To me, those are all facilitators of getting to his goal, which is getting it sold, getting the money to the heirs. So, I think it's a win-win. I don't know. Seeing how he would see that as anyway, I see it as a positive.
I think we could convince him, as long as we try to assure him that it's not gonna be a 2-year-long drawn-out community visioning process. For Kenmore Village, we did it in 2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we brought in, and it was grounded in reality. We had developers saying, no, you're dreaming, people. You're not gonna get a Whole Foods here, or whatever. And so I think if it's ultra grounded in reality, and I don't think we should have what I call a blank slate exercise with the community. Like, what are your dreams for Lake Point? Sky's the limit, we gotta have it just totally grounded in reality, with developers saying, here's the market, and here's probably what you can realistically do on this site, before we tell the community, what do you want?
Bill?
I think the other thing that we'd be bringing to the table that would be different from before, that we could use I've heard that before, is we have, I think, a clearer idea of like the multifamily tax exemption and the different fees that we're willing to contribute to help the project move along. So I think we are more concrete in what we're bringing to the table.
We are.
That's a difference. I don't think that existed in the 1990s.
I totally agree. That is the significant difference. And if you, like you said, Roger, he's ready to sell. Well, part of being ready to sell is staging your property. What do? Well, you do all the things that you tidy it up and you pull together the loose ends so that there's less questions for a buyer when they walk in. And that's what he needs to do. If he is ready to sell, and it's unrealistic if he thinks he doesn't want to wait another 2 years. Well, if it took 3 years to get the information we have now on the property, he can't expect a property of that complexity to somebody's just going to roll into town and write a check. And so it's like either he wants to sell it and he wants to work with us, or he doesn't. I mean, it's like you can't have it both ways.
Deborah, and Milton?
Yeah, well, and the other difference is we have a financial analysis. That's about as grounded in reality as you can get. I mean, that showed the huge gap. That's a big reality check, I think, when we present it to the public is, all the pieces are clear now. We know the financial, we know what we can do as a city, we know what developers, essentially know what developers are willing to bring. You lay that all out as your reality check, and and within that confine, okay, now what's the vision? So I don't know, I think we're in a pretty different position than we were even when I got on council. So yeah, a year ago.
Milton?
Mine's a related question. So the pro forma, do we have the rights to that?
Yeah.
Do we own that?
We own it. Yeah. So, I think Brent mentioned the P-succuses and getting rid of those.
Some of them, not all of them necessarily.
Well, and that's part of the process,
Right.
the scoping and the strategy.
Okay, so that's a big workload item, and that will take a long time to do. That's a year plus. I don't have that on anybody's work plan. My thought was what we were saying with, so back when we did the RB zone several years ago, 2013, 2014, 15, we were gonna take a look at the P-suffixes and get rid of them,
but the consensus we came to with the property owner, at the time was, you know what, these P suffixes, we know that they were for a unique project, we know they're gonna change. Let's address them with whatever developer we get, and then we can do that through a development agreement. And that's why we didn't touch the P suffixes back then.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah,
We have a lot more information now, so that I think that a big difference is that was a different property, but on the Lake Point site, we hadn't gone through the last 3 years that we've gone through with the pro forma and everything, so now we really know the financial difficulties that project would have. And so even if we went out for an RFP, whoever would be interested, one of the things they're going to be totally disinterested in are the P suffixes. So if we can proactively address that ahead of time, it seems like it helps the process. Because we're gonna have to deal with it at one level. It's either gonna be further down the line or up front. And it seems more logical to deal with it up front so a developer has a better idea of the scale of what they're getting into.
Milton and Deborah.
I like the word that Brent used, staging. So to get the property really ready, and the simpler we can make it, the things, the complications that we can get rid of, and it may take 2 years to get the property ready, to come back on the market and be successful next time. But the things Gary can do to simplify it and clean it up and make it look right, and things we can do, so that I think we're more likely to get good candidates for the RFP instead of if we bring the same complexities that we have now. We do have more information, but still, we haven't made it simpler for an eventual developer.
Yeah, I mean, I read the P suffixes too. And I don't know which direction you go, whether you start with shaving them or whether you start from scratch and say, well, really, I mean, my preference would be just do the start from scratch, but basically, get some consensus about 3 or 4 things that are really key. I mean, there was really only 3 or 4 in my opinion. And just build a little statement that says, we need these 4 things, and that's part of the vision, and maybe it's not a P suffix, but it's just part of the, I don't know which direction you go, but it doesn't seem like it would be that hard to, build some consensus on which of them.
If that work needs to be done, I'm okay with it not being done this year. If it takes, it's on the 2020 work plan, fine. Stuff that can be done this year, stuff next year.
I'm not sure, well, I'm a little concerned that if we were to get rid of the P suffixes, then there's still the underlying zoning, and I maybe on some level we're almost making it too easy for somebody to then come in and do something without consulting the city at all, because if it's within zoning, they don't need a development agreement from us, they may not need anything from us, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's outside the realm of possibility because of extraordinary circumstances around the property, but, if we take away, the access to the waterfront and the roads and all of this stuff that's in the P suffixes, does somebody just come in and build within current zoning, and then we don't really have any influence on what goes on in there? I don't know.
in fact, along those lines, I think I remember we saw the P suffixes, the existing gnarly P suffixes, as a bargaining chip that we could give up in return for things.
Right.
Yeah, please.
Unless somebody else is on. So maybe I misunderstood the process, but I believe we could, in the same process, we could eliminate P suffixes, but add what we want. They're not going to be called P suffixes, but they could still be, and a lot of them would be obvious. It would be like water access around the point. Some of them would be very obvious, but then we'd create a zoning that maybe wasn't RB, but allowed for what we wanted in conjunction with what would work for a response.
How's that not spot zoning though at that point?
Well,
We're talking about one parcel.
I would say why I think it's different is because the P suffixes are different.
Well, no, but I'm talking from a legal standpoint. The P suffixes were agreed to by Gary and King County. They worked that out. So he was party to that. If we were to go and do zoning on one parcel, I worry that might trigger some sort of legal issues.
Well, maybe so, but I just feel like I would never give them up without getting something.
Right,
That wasn't my intention. I was just thinking, And if there's a legal issue there, I don't know, then I guess I need to be enlightened, but I,
I think the underlying zoning could still be RB, but then you have an overlay for Lake Point or something.
Some of the same things would apply to the plywood supply also, water
Right.
access. So I think you wouldn't have to make it spot zoning. I think you could make it anything water, major water development zoning.
Stacy?
And if we didn't want to do a big work item for P suffixes right away, as long as we looked at the P suffixes and figured out what we really want, and that RFP went out saying, hey, we know there's all these P suffixes, we're willing to do a parameter agreement, but we definitely need this, and this, then the developer goes, oh, okay, I don't have to stress about that, but I know that this is what they're not gonna give up on, and I know that, Widener had no clue what we really, really wanted.
Yeah.
So
I'm seeing 3 possible paths. One is, Widener comes back to the table and we pick up where we left off with him. That's option 1. Then there's 2 subsets of B, of plan B. One is we do a Kenmore Village style 2-month, 3-month process, do an RFP with Gary and get something out this year. Don't mess with the P suffixes, but do what Stacy just said, where we tell them, hey, we know we got these P suffixes, but here's the ones we really care about. So that's lower, little Roman numeral I under Plan B, and Roman numeral number 2 under Plan B would be for us to really do a reset process. And then, really open it up to the community, take a year plus to redo the P suffixes. And then work with the property owner to ultimately do an RFP. I'm fine with either one. Brian, Nancy.
I would prefer option B, small.
Small wit, small wit.
I. BI.
Yeah.
Stacy?
I feel like the option B, small I, would be a good first step.
Yeah.
And if that didn't yield any results, then we might have to dig deeper into, the nitty gritties of P suffixes and all that. And if we open up P suffixes, we're gonna probably have to open it up pilot plywood supply. Or at least they're probably going to ask that we open it up for plywood supply.
But don't take too deep.
Well, that's the thing, so, we say, we give, if we're doing a request for proposals on this, we're really upfront of, this is what we will not give on. I feel like it's a good first step to see what happens after that.
in addition to what P suffixes we would give up, I think it would be worthwhile to also include what few things we may want. Because clearly there'll be some gives in that RFP. There'll be the give, we'll have a discussion on tax rebates and impact fees being reinvested and things like that. And then eliminating the P suffixes. But I think it's also reasonable if there's a small list of things that we also want that aren't currently in the P suffixes, but we know as a community, this is really important. I think that should be in there as well. And I don't mean a big 7-page document about what we want, but something that's very clear and concise that somebody can set an expectation with what the city expects.
Nancy?
There are additional things that we may want to consider as part of this or a subsequent action. And a lot of communities around the state have done what's called end action, so that it further kind of sets the table because you've had upfront environmental review of a big project. So that's something that is intriguing to me. Interesting to learn about that.
Stacy?
So going back to the whole beginning of this, we're gonna get a letter from Widener. It may or may not be a counter proposal for whatever we set out. We might wanna think about doing this, what's our best and really nitty-gritty offer that we would be putting in a RFP and tell that to him first, and see if he wants to bite on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense to everybody else. On the RFP, I'm kind of jumping ahead of the RFP itself, recognizing that there would be a community process where we would put together a vision statement or a position statement. But on the RFP itself, in the RFP, I would also want to have some really laid out expectations and milestones for all the potential candidates, so they know. Because this has happened way too often in my experience, and it's happened in Kenmore's experience more than once, where we're wooed and romanced by a developer, and they convince us they can do all these wonderful things to us, and then they get control of the property, and then they just mess around with us for 5 years. And that happened, I wasn't here, so I don't understand it totally, but Urban Partners tied up Kenmore Village for 5 years. And it happened to some degree with other developers we've dealt with here recently. Happened to me in Gig Harbor, where once the developer controls the land, then if there aren't timelines and milestones that are making them move and making them jump and making them progress, then they'll just screw around with you for as long as they want. And so in the RFP, I want some sharp, crisp dates, like if you don't do this by this date, you're gone. And then if you don't do this by this date, you're gone, and so forth.
Can I ask just kind of a rookie question? So has the city considered just buying the land?
Only 49.
Right. But it's just such a big number for a city like us. But,
Can we talk about that now?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Is that appropriate? I mean, I have some comments on that, I just don't know if it's appropriate.
yeah, because for purchasing land.
Probably not.
The only reason I ask it just is I listened to the top of the conversation here. Clearly owning that, what you just said was about, well, once you own the land, if you're a developer, then you can do this and this. And then your other conversation, gotta get the landowner in there, if we don't have a landowner, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff to do with that. So that's why I asked. I just got, well, if you were the landowner, then you could mess with yourself, and then, but then I didn't know if that had been considered and if bonding or, what all the financial aspects of that would be. Not that you should talk about it, but just tying the two conversations together, it seemed like, that seems.
Would argue too, that there's something to be said about not just the land, all of the land, but the areas of the land that we have the most interest in is around the waterfront, and
That's where I was going.
Yes.
So one thought is, I guess that's plan C, or maybe that becomes plan B. But one thought is we just say, hey, Sergeant, we're actually interested in the 15 acres around the perimeter. And we'll do a bond measure and ask our voters to buy that and develop that into a park and knock yourself out on the rest of it.
No,
Well, except you want it to be synthetic with the,
but that does fall into alternatives, and clearly it gets to a point where you have to start thinking about what are your options. And I have no doubt that the assessor didn't just come up with 6.4 million on their own. They came up with it probably because through an appeals or some information that was provided. So if the property owner is saying it's worth 6.4 million, then clearly that makes a purchase much more appealing.
Yeah. And if, just think how much more appealing the rest of the property would be if you had a public waterfront park built around it. I mean, there's really great research that talks about how parks revitalize downtowns.
And that's because he can't do much with, he can't do any development.
Right.
In that cut 150 feet or whatever from the shore.
But the same thing, can we do redevelopment there? It is buffered. It is shoreline.
get access
It
to the
is
water.
nothing within that buffer, so how much can we really do to develop that park space?
Well, I think,
Do a pathway, I mean, there's a lot of access.
Say the desired, oftentimes, I mean, there are many different types of parks for sure, but I mean, the desired thing down there would be the walkway, the pathway to enjoy the views and benches, so it'd be hopefully low impact, that would, just speaking potentially, that would fit within shoreline management or whatever else.
That's what I have in mind.
Yeah, with a nice,
So you have to do a walkway and not a pathway, since it is buffer, wetland buffer?
You can do trails within buffers.
You can do trails.
Yeah, lookout points,
And
access.
benches and that, and that would be great.
right, I think of all the things we could potentially spend money on, there's probably nothing that would rise to the level of, outside of the absolute core functions of government, what would be to have public access at that point. I think that would be about as high on the list as almost anything.
Yeah, I mean,
It's shown up repeatedly on questionnaires we've done for the public.
last big hunk of property in Lake Washington, as I understand it. Right?
I would think that the 58 acres of waterfront shoreline are almost like a liability, major expense for him. And if you're talking about letting him kind of do whatever he wants on the rest of it, it should be just a fair trade.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think Brian's right. Say, hey, let us take that shoreline restoration burden off your shoulders. But one thing to know though is that would be then an expensive proposition for us. So restoring, there's all that, what they call the riprap and hard armoring that we'd have to yank out and put, and we'd have to slope back the shoreline and bring it back to its natural state, which is all wonderful and good, but it's expensive.
But even if it's expensive, and even if it would take years and years to do it, I think just knowing, I mean, there's a couple of benefits. One, just knowing that the public had ownership of that, or it was assured to happen, I think is something. And I also think then that contributes to the development of the site, because that's another feather in the cap of the unknowns for somebody who's looking at the site to develop. It's like, oh, well, this is nice. This is a part of the public investment that will help benefit my property.
Yeah, for sure.
Deborah?
Well, what I'm hearing, and I had raised this as well, the purchase idea around the perimeter. I mean, are we, I don't know what they're trying to kind of put in order, are we more favorable to that or the RFP? I mean, those are two different approaches. Are we, plan B, and if that fails, we go to plan C? I'm just curious, where do we, and can we even talk about this?
Right.
So my answer to that is what I said earlier, is that if the property owner wants to be a participant to help further doing what we all want, including what he says he wants, then I would say, yes, let's work with him. But if it's like pulling teeth every time we try to do something, then there's no point in trying to work with him and wasting our staff time.
That makes sense. Yeah. So then we would go to plan C, basically.
Or
at that
some,
point.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
C1, B.
Right, yeah, but I mean, the trying to control the perimeter.
Okay. Other thoughts on the,
So I'm hearing plan B subsection I.
Yes.
so I think
Keep it
that's
simple, Brian, without actually changing all the zoning.
what I think I've heard is that the short version of a reset, if Widener does basically go, that's no longer an option. Something that approximated what you did at Kenmore Village would be your next step then. And with some considerations of these secondary conversations that have just occurred, hearing either look into that or think more about that in terms of what that might be.
And I'd still bring in a developer panel. I'd hire Brian O'Connor. I think he is so key in this. I've really come to trust his expertise. He will definitely ground us in reality. Yeah, so.
Okay.
We probably need, we don't have a budget for Brian O'Connor, so
we need some money for him.
Okay. Who's in charge of money?
I'm not
Joanne.
They're not here today.
We're in charge of money. We're in charge.
So are we kind of at a close as far as what we're gonna do as far as next steps then?
Yeah, let me, with Brian and Nancy's help, maybe we'll kind of memorialize it and bring it to you at a council meeting.
Okay. Okay. Make a quick note here. Okay. Great, thank you. Well, not bad. Our next topic then, water issues. Water quality, aquatic management plan, recycle, public access still a priority. I think Rob, you brought that in. Pool is an ongoing conversation. So let's start with water quality. What say you on that?
That stream monitoring, maybe?
Water quality with Rob.
Was it?
Yes.
Maybe, maybe any stream monitoring.
So,
Next year, remind him what he brought up before.
well, I could actually just give you your email.
Maybe you need to.
Water quality and habitat restoration for our streams and rivers.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Is that for Tara?
Got another river? Well, maybe we can skip it then, because I think it's, should be important, and I think it is to you, and we definitely putting resources. We want to leverage, folks like, Adopt a Stream and, Eric Adams group, what's the name of it?
Snow King Watershed.
Snow King Watershed, and by the way, that story needs to be told.
Yes.
Snow King Watershed, they've planted thousands of plants on Swamp Creek and hundreds of volunteer hours, and lots of grant money. So I've mentioned that to Becky and Nancy, but we gotta get that story out there, because it's a really cool story. But it's really sickening to see how unhealthy our river and creek is. They're in bad shape, and 00562. So a lot of it has to do with upstream goings on, but, so, you know what I mean by that? So Swamp Creek is messed up, not because of necessarily because of what we're doing, but what's going on as far up as Payne Field. And so we've been pretty vigilant at going after them for things they're doing. We even partnered with Snow King or Adopt a Stream to challenge a Snohomish County Airport project, and we won. That was illegally putting impervious surface too close to the stream. So anyway, thank you for giving Richard and his team the resources to do what they need to do. So.
David and then Nancy.
So, I mean, it's good to see efforts that are being put forward to help restore this area and at least monitor what's going on. The money that we allocated back into, or the vote that we took back in 2008, 2009 to put telemetry on Swamp Creek is now installed. I've been looking at it on my phone here with real-time data coming through. Senator Cantwell's office has been extremely interested in this. And, I think if we now can put this together on a one sheet, there's federal monies to be had to help with these efforts that we're doing. And I think we're ignoring that. And I think it's something that we should start capitalizing on. So I know they were very interested in the fact that we were doing it with the monitoring. So I'd really love to see something written up where I can go show them and say, we've done it. So
that could be tied to put the story together.
exactly.
Right.
Well, I was just gonna say, I don't know enough about the history of it or anything, so I would love to actually know what you're talking about. I mean, I know about the creek and the problems with it, but I don't know.
Well, we voted back, I think it was in 9, to put in telemetry, monitoring, so that we could start to get a historical record of things like pH, water temperature, turbidity, O2 level, things that we're doing now. And it was initially thought we'd put one into the river and into Swamp Creek so they could sort of compare our restorative efforts on that. And then it was decided to take one to the river and put it into 056, but I think it's a really good idea. But they're just coming online now. And so,
So do we have that data available for us to see?
yeah, it's on, I found it yesterday, it's on our city website. You go into the surface water management, and you can go in and select the monitor stream. I just figured that all out yesterday when Richard was here.
And does it show the historical changes?
It shows stuff over time, yes.
But it just came online.
Yeah,
It's pretty short.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's pretty short right now because it just got,
The old data was twice a year, right? They'd go out and actually.
yeah, they'd actually go and look at
Now we
this
have
year. Now
continual.
it's
Oh,
continuous.
That's great.
So, I mean, it's really nice, and the city's done a tremendous effort in putting this stuff installed. There are great big sensors that go in and get pulled out for cleaning regularly. But I mean, Richard's got this pretty much all worked out now. Now it's just, it's got the telemetry, it's got the telephone technology to carry that information back to City Hall and get it plotted on graphs and stuff, so it's nice. And like I said, I know there are federal offices that would love to see this data, that would then come through with more money. We've got Forterra interested in helping us do restoration work. All of the cities along Sammamish River to do restoration work, to bring the temperature down, to provide a better environment for salmon returning. So, I mean, there's efforts underway, and I think Kenmore has initiated quite a few of them.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's something that we start, but I want to see it finished. And so, again, to get some information, like one sheet information pages that we can take back to DC and let different staff know that we're actually doing this, I think would really release some more funds, so.
Okay. Nancy, Rob, and Joe.
I just noticed, on my email, the Friday report that you all get, there is a piece about Swamp Creek measurements over time, and things are actually getting better.
Cool.
Get it.
Rob and Joe.
The mayor mentioned Forterra. I hadn't heard from them in a while, so I need to ping them and see where they're at on the restoration efforts for Sammamish River. Water utilities are required by state law to produce an annual report they have to mail to all the ratepayers. And so once a year, you get a report. I don't know if you notice it, but you get a report from NUD on their water utility. I had to do that in Gig Harbor when we ran a water sewer utility. So it's not required by state law, but I think we should do the same for surface water. I think we should produce an annual surface water report to our community. And I've already been working with Becky and Richard on creating one to come out in the next couple of months, because people are gonna see a rate increase, and they're gonna wonder why. And so there's gonna be an explanation about that. There's also gonna be an explanation about the why we do things, why we need clean water, and why we need to restore streams, and all the good things we're doing. It'll have a nice piece about Snow King watershed. And it's gonna have all these really neat pieces, and it's gonna turn out to be probably like an 8-page full-on newsletter just for surface water. But we're gonna give that a try this early spring, and I'd like to turn it into an annual report. I think that's another way of being accountable to our citizens.
Okay. Joe?
To help tell the story about the Snow King watershed and the restoration, all the rest of it, and try and pursue those federal funds, maybe we could do a proclamation. Recognizing the Snow King watershed group's plantings and restoration of Swamp Creek, and also mentioning the city's monitoring efforts.
Happy to do that.
Joe?
I like the idea of elevating the surface water stuff, particularly given all the things that are happening in the rate increase and stuff like that. Just from where I sit in my regular job, I know that sometimes reports can take on a life of their own and they can tacitly kind of elevate one part of the overall body relative to the others. I'm just thinking of, what does that do to economic development? Does that mean economic development needs an annual report? You know, I worry a little bit about elevating one aspect of city work, separating it out from the rest. I guess my preference would be to have that rolled into our city messaging, our city newsletter. So I don't, that might be just me, I'm a little sensitive to that. Just-
Brent?
Yeah.
We haven't, I'll get back to your suggestion. No, he just made us, let's have a conversation.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about it that way. The thing that I had thought about was an 8-page. I think it's, if you're interested in water quality, you're going to read it, but I would say if it's 8 pages, I think oftentimes people then will like not even read any of it. And I almost think it would be better to have a little bit in multiple newsletters, so you're probably gonna keep the attention span. Just a thought.
And it wasn't just gonna be surface water management, it was gonna be kind of like a special edition of the newsletter, the environmental edition. So we're gonna-
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I should have said that.
Oh, so that makes a little more sense.
You wanna
So
try
that you
special
kind of a
edition?
rolling emphasis perhaps on certain things in the city. Okay, Milton, then I want to get back to the suggestion that Joe, I haven't lost that, so we'll circle back. Okay, Milton?
I think I addressed Deborah's concern that we already get police reports periodically. We get things from the development, you know, how many applications there are. We get things on the business, the KBI, how many incubator people we have. So I think we already get a variety of reports for different areas at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. So I think this could just be seen as one of those reports we produce. But instead of just saying, well, it might happen or it might never happen again, say, well, at least once a year is worth looking at. I don't think it would compete with other areas that already do give us reports.
Well, just a point of clarification, we get those reports, but I think we were talking about this going out to the public, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think we do a public. We do?
And if we have a meeting and give us the report, then that's okay.
And become part of
Oh,
the
yeah,
record.
okay, I see, yeah.
Okay.
But to Deborah's point, we don't have a newsletter about the police.
Yeah,
Right.
I guess
That's a separate one, but you,
Special
I do read your newsletter, so you do have different emphases throughout the year in certain major stories, like, that's what you're thinking.
I wouldn't see that newsletter would have to be produced every year in order to say, we want to report yearly on stormwater.
Okay,
Come to the review,
Got it.
report to the council,
Yeah,
it becomes
yeah,
part of the public record.
okay.
I think it's important to do this particular newsletter, given the substantial rate increase that's coming. If we don't do it every year, that's fine, but I'd like to do one this year, just I'd like some education and the why to go with the rate increase.
Back to Joe's proposal, the original bit of proclamation, which is something that would come from you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Mhm.
good.
Okay.
That's great.
That'll be it to do that. Point. Okay. Anything else on water quality? All right. Aquatic management plan, just a review cycle, Deborah, that was.
Yeah, this was brought to my attention that the aquatic management plan didn't have a built-in review cycle. And most, like, you know, shoreline master plan, you know, typically other plans have a review cycle where you come back and say, well, you know, did this work? What do we still need to do? So that was citizen-generated request to have a review cycle. Ideal, I mean, this person wanted annual. I don't know if that's realistic, but I mean, you know, at least biannually.
Yeah, we got some Department of Ecology grant money to do the plans we did.
Yeah.
So maybe we can see if ecology will give us some money to do the review.
So it's a review of the plan?
Yeah.
Results.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of a come back to the group kind of coming back, you know, every year or once every other year to kind of say, you know, do we need to tweak this at all? Did it work?
You know, closing the feedback loop, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, we're spending money, we don't have a clue, did it actually do anything?
Right.
That we wanted to? But
Okay, is that, you have to do that, okay. Okay. A question, is public access still a priority of the council? That was yours, Rob.
Yeah, that was my question. In some of my one-on-ones with you, I will mention something about spending money to do public access. And often the response I get is, oh no, that's okay. We've already done a ton when it comes to public access to water. You know, we're doing this, this, and this. So we don't need to really do that much more. And let's build a city hall park instead, or let's do something else instead that's not water related. And if you look at your goals, you know, they are in priority order. So if you have money to spend, they should be in priority order. And at least that's my sense, is you look at where you want to, then you look at, you put the money in priorities. So I'm just not getting the sense that public access is as much of a priority as it used to be, and that's fine. I'm not saying it needs to be, but I just want your goals reflected accurately then.
Which we will take up this afternoon, but,
Yeah.
but often these discussions inform our afternoon process, so maybe it'd be important to talk about it. Joe, you?
No.
Right.
Yeah, I think part of it is we've got the improvements that are already on the book. So I think it's, if you consider priority based on what's already in the works plan versus what's completing, there's maybe a little disconnect there. But I would, other than completing everything we have in our plans and getting access at Lake Point, I'd be satisfied at that point to say that's definitely a diminished priority for me.
Okay, Stacy, then Nigel.
So it's still a number one priority to me, but it doesn't mean that's the only thing we should do. So yes, we need to do it, and we are doing a lot for walkways and waterways and trying to get Lake Point and all that, but we can't just not do anything else at the same time just because that's our number one goal. So that's why, you know, I'm in favor of City Hall Park. It's, you know, we haven't done any, you know, little parks here and there, so it's just not 100% equation for me.
Nigel?
Yeah, I mean, I think once you factor in, you know, look at what we've done over the last 5 years with Squires and everything that we have on the books for walkways and waterways, and then Lake Point, like Brent said. You know, at that point, I would love to turn, you know, to focus elsewhere, because it can't just all be water. Once walkways and waterways is done, and once Lake Point's done, that's kind of maxing out what we're able to really do anyway, realistically, I think. And those are huge monumental steps for a city our size as far as water access goes, once those are all completed. So I'll be comfortable once those are completed, you know, moving focus.
So that makes sense. Your comp plan has what we're calling a water walk, is kind of the long-term vision. You guys know what I mean by the water walk? So it's supposed to go from on the north shore of Sammamish River, from Lake Point through Swanson's property, all the way up the river. There's supposed to be a water walk. And yeah, I get it. You know, if it's not in your top 5 goals, that's fine. But if there are opportunities to leverage other people's money to create new opportunities to start filling in the puzzle pieces of that water walk, are you okay with that? Example being Kroger's property. There's an opportunity to leverage other people's money to open Kroger's property to the public. And I'm assuming you want me working on that, as long as we're not writing checks.
Sure.
Yeah, if we're not writing checks.
Yeah.
That's okay. Which is Kroger.
Next.
Right next to Tweet.
Squares.
Right next to the Squires.
Right next to Squires, yeah.
Deborah? Deborah, then David?
Yeah, I mean, you know, loop us in when you hear things like that. I think, you know, I kind of concur with what I thought we were at. It's like, you know, we're putting a fair amount of energy into thinking about Lake Point and trying to work on Lake Point, and that is the biggest piece of the puzzle. I'd love to have a water walk. That's, you know, there's a ton of private property along there that's already, I'm not sure how to articulate that. You know, I'm a big advocate of waterfront access, but I feel like we are actually putting a ton of emphasis on it currently with walkways and waterways in Lake Point, and the rest, we need to kind of focus on other things, unless there's a brilliant opportunity that you hear about, which it sounds like you have, so that's exciting.
Great, David?
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with Nigel, but all the polling we've done of our public access to water is number one. It continues to be there. And until that changes, I think access needs to be access to the water. I mean, our priority needs to be access to the water until the public's opinion changes.
So this is very common place to be in. You set your goals, you fund them, and you work on them, and they have a lifespan of work. And so you get to this place where you're still obligated to do that, and there's this view that, well, we've set that up, we're doing it, and then the other either opportunities or interests come along, which often get reflected in the afternoon session. But I've seen this before, not with others, not just yourself, where the manager needs to reaffirm that we're still finishing this thing out, right? Where you're not really wanting me to take a hard left or right turn. And it's well, put words in your mouth, it's kind of a practical thing for you. You kind of go, look, you want me to do this or not? It is in your goals. I'm hearing you say, yes, finish it out. We have a lot to do. We're getting to a place where we go, maybe that will be less important, unless, of course, I guess your citizens want to keep doing it. So, Nigel.
Going back to what Rob was asking earlier about the water walk, I would say, yeah, as long as it's contiguous to something else that we already control. So a program makes sense. But, you know, if an opportunity comes up with one of the mobile home parks that's not connected to anything else, I don't know. I wouldn't be comfortable spending a lot of time and energy on that.
David?
Yeah, the water walk, I mean, I think that should really come up further on the list because we're doing more and more, especially with the walkways and waterways. And I really think that, not in the top 5, but it needs to be on the goal somewhere.
Okay, Milton, Deborah?
I think if we did the walkways and waterways and got access to 15 acres of Lake Point, and we developed those so citizens could actually get access to the water, I think our citizens would be happy, and I think it would not stay this high on the list. So I don't know that they really care about the whole walkway. Those two sets of things, if they were completed, I think most people would be pretty happy.
That walkway around around Lake Point is part of the walkway.
Deborah?
That's an essential though,
Yes.
but you could do that and not do the rest.
Yeah, I guess I go back to something Dave Marin said, 20 years ago when we were working on this, is, trails and walkways that go somewhere. So as long as there is an articulated connection between these things, whether the whole thing is on the water or whether some of it is set back on 175th, but clearly articulated as part of the walk. I think we could do some of that a priori, even before we have all of the pieces knit on the water, could make an articulated path through the city. I guess I'd almost like to revisit, like, where are we at with making our walkways around the cities that go somewhere, and to, see what are the high value places to improve or articulate.
Yeah, so I don't really know what all the different barriers are on it, other than the fact they're privately owned, but I don't know what's feasible. And maybe some of it, some of it, it's kind of obvious. Like you look at Plywood Supply and you think they got that beautiful strip of grassy land with the trees, and it's such a natural to have a walkway along there. It's unbelievable that there isn't public access to it. And so there may be ways of acquiring easements or something, and maybe it's something more like the marina, where it's open to the public from sunrise to sunset, and then it closes down. Maybe it's less about actually acquiring the property and creating a development plan that we have to engage in, and maybe it's more just an easement process that is a connection, like what Deborah was talking about, where you're facilitating the ability to get somewhere.
Milton?
Probably 9 or 10 years or so ago, we talked at council about this idea of connectivity. And it was, what are the important things in our city we want to connect with some kind of a trail, some kind of a path, some kind of a bike lane, or whatever. And that's almost the question. So instead of saying we will dedicate a lot of resources, once we're done with the walkways and waterways, once we've got Lake Point, and we connect a few major pieces, is it actually important to go all the way along the river and all the way up Long Creek? Maybe just connecting the important parts is important. And it may not all go along the river. It may zip from there to here, but then you go along the Burkefield and then you can connect to something else. So more the connectivity idea, and maybe there will eventually be a bird watch out there in, swamp number 3. Who knows? But connecting the important pieces.
Anything else on this? So kind of get a sense of where your council is on this, Rob?
Yeah, this is more of a prep for your goal setting session, just something to be thinking about.
And underscoring that manager does use those goals to craft plans and resources or not, depending on what those goals are. Okay. Anything else? Ready to move on now? The pool. Where are we on the pool? What? Joe?
The mayor got some news from Ron Dembowski right before the holiday that he can fill us in on, and then I'll follow up with a more recent conversation with Dembowski.
Okay.
So Rod's doing a public parks levy, and there's also some other funds, I think, from another source that he wants to put into a pool somewhere in his region. Shoreline and Lake Forest Park want to build a pool that we could go in on, or we could certainly ask for money to build a pool along with Bothell, perhaps in Wayne or somewhere else. So there is the opportunity for money that would not necessarily be part of the NSCRA.
NSP.
NPRSA, I will get that right. Very confusing set of initials. But anyway, there's a possibility of funding to build a new pool. The problem is, where's the maintenance money's coming from? And that is the big problem, is the maintenance monies.
So, thank you, and that's what Dembowski reiterated to me, and yeah, he did clarify, I think, that maintenance money was not going to be in the levy, but what he was, an action item that he was asking us to consider was a letter of support for the King County Public Parks levy, which would, the process would begin in one of 2 dates. It's either May or maybe a little bit later for the levy, depending upon whether it's when it is in the fall or late summer or something like that. So, but it might be as early as May or a little bit before that, a letter of support for a general King County Parks levy raising money for a pool, and that, we could get some portion of that. And no specifics really beyond that, but just raising money for a pool.
But the Sparks levy he wants, there's a whole lot of other programs involved.
Yeah,
Just
yep.
Pool's just a small part of it.
Okay, discussion on the letter, Bill.
So I guess for me, my concern is the long-term cost. I'd like to see more data, because if the assumption is somehow King County will be responsible for building this, and then we're responsible, all the cities that said, yes, we'd like that, we're responsible for keeping it going forever. I'd want to know how much that cost is forever. And how does that compare to other issues in our priority-based budgeting? And, again, it all comes down to money eventually. I need to know how much we're talking about.
Again, this is something that I don't think the city of Kenmore would do on its own.
No, I
We could
understand.
apply for part of the money, but this is something I see the school district having to be involved in.
But even if we're
Because the
responsible
school
for,
district is the one that really needs pools for the kids. And they're the ones that really should be responsible for a good percentage of the maintenance.
But looking at what they're trying to do with maintenance, especially on Moorlands and that, I'm not very hopeful. But that's where it's gotta come from.
Stacy and then Deborah.
Yeah, I support using other people's money right now, and not ours. I don't support using any Kenmore money at this time. It's not high on our goals. And really, before I would put any Kenmore money in it, location is key. If they end up putting it out in Woodinville, no, I'm not gonna support it. If it's at Wayne, maybe. You know, we do have pools. We have Montlake Terrace, we've got, the one in Linwood. There are pools within a decent driving distance, so if the pool's gonna be any farther away, then no, it's not. See, putting
Deborah,
Kenmore money into it at this point.
Deborah then Rob.
Yeah, I was gonna just finish up. We've got a
Oh,
lot
I'm
of,
sorry.
yeah, pausing. But, you know, we've got a lot of budget commitments right now with walkways and waterways, and might or might not be required for Lake Point, and I don't know, I feel like focusing on those is over focusing on a pool right now. But I totally support letters for other funding.
Deborah then Rob.
Yeah, I think maybe that we're all saying things, but I'm not sure. I would totally support a letter if we have the three cities and the district also doing their letters and having some clear articulation of what the commitment would be, particularly from the district. I think this is an opportunity to use other people's money, as you said, and that's huge on the build, but of course equally, not equally, but it is huge on the O&M as well. So we've gotta, I don't know that I feel comfortable doing a letter without that clear commitment. So, yeah.
Rob and then
Just a question, so this levy that Dombrowski is talking about, didn't I hear you say that it's more, it would be more oriented for Shoreline, Lake Forest Park and more?
Yeah, but it's for his district, I mean.
So if it's benefiting those cities, so here's where I'm going.
I know exactly where you're going.
So we have 4 4A high schools in our school district with no pool. I've never seen that anywhere.
Right.
And the pool they use is Juanita High Schools, and there's some problems with that one. Number one, it's about to break down any minute. I mean, something big is about to go out on it, like the boiler. I'm getting this info from the Kirkland city manager, but the school district, the Lake Washington School District's position on Juanita Pool, according to Kurt, is that they're just gonna kind of keep the Juanita Pool band-aided together. And if something big goes out on it, they're just closing the pool. And then Kirkland would be asked to fix the boiler or something. But the school district is just gonna close the pool. The Lake Washington School District is gonna close the pool if something big goes out on it. And then our kids have nowhere to go. And the other thing about it is, even if that Juanita Pool continues to limp along, our kids are way down the rung on usage, and they have to get up like at 4 a.m. to be able to have their turn at the pool, you know. So I'm hoping that it would do something to address our school district, and maybe Dombrowski's deal would, but we can't lose sight of the fact that the biggest winner in this is gonna be the school district, and they've gotta have skin in the game.
So I mean, there is pool money that can go to Shoreline, Lake Forest Park to build a pool. It's also possible that part of that pool comes to Kenmore. But like Rob says, we can't do this unless the school district's really important.
Okay, Brent, Joe, and Nigel.
So because I think this is a really important distinction. If we write the letter, we're supporting what potentially is a pool in a place we don't want that's not affiliated with our school district. And I think we need to be very clear if we're gonna send a letter in support. Doesn't mean we can't support the bond either. I don't know. I'm just saying, but on the pool issue, because I think it makes immensely more sense to stay in our NSD boundaries and work with the school district. And location is key. I mean, what you said about where to go, and it's like, if you go anywhere outside of the other side of downtown Bothell, it makes no sense for Kenmore, because you might as well go to Mount Lake Terrace.
Joe and then Nigel.
My understanding is that we can or would, but big confirmation requirement here, be able to take money or Kenmore's share of that and then possibly apply it where we see fit. But, yeah, that would have to be the primary factor.
And I should know this, isn't Shoreline working on?
Yeah, it was just, that was
Yeah.
what I was about to bring up, is that
Yeah, I saw
Shoreline
something on that
has a
yesterday.
piece of land, and Shoreline is already, I mean, I was talking with the Shoreline City Council member a month ago, and she brought up the pool that they're working on, and I think they're working with the YMCA to program it maybe, but there's still questions as to whether it'll be, how large it'll be and all
Where,
of that.
where would it be?
No idea. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head. They had some surplus property that they were kind of putting in as part of the deal, but, so my understanding is Shoreline is kind of already going down the path, on the pool front.
By any chance, is it owned by Faircrest School? Because I
I
don't think it,
There's
that was one of the thoughts.
You don't think so?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have literally no
That's
idea.
what
what
I
they're
heard
talking
it.
about.
That's what I think I had.
I mean, that would make sense.
That's not that far, I mean, it's not close, but it's not that far away.
No, I think we need something that works for the school district, obviously, and I think we need something that doesn't have us on the hook for M&O.
Yes,
Because,
definitely.
I mean, building a pool is expensive, but maintaining and operating a pool is also ridiculous. I mean, you're just throwing money.
It's far more
Yeah,
expensive.
you're just throwing money away every year, so it's like owning a boat.
Like owning a boat, well said.
It's fun, but expensive.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, I mean, on that, it's, I do think it's absolutely one of the primary functions of government to make such funding, like a park and or quote, throw money away on maintenance. But I recognize that if we've got the school district and other funding sources, of course, we want to be as efficient as we can in our funds because they're limited and we need to take advantage of that. So I mean, the hope in the action item would be a letter of support for the King County levy. I guess with the idea or how it's drafted, that Kenmore could use any money thereof to apply as it sees fit or something similar. Or it's not even like a letter of intent, it's just like, hey, everybody support the King County levy when we know that we're gonna get some money.
So then I'm hearing two different levels of conversation. One would be a general levy where the money would be parsed out between 3 entities
Or four.
or 4.
Yeah, that's what it is.
4, and then those entities can do what they wish with the money and versus then, so the letter would be in support of that general concept. A lot of the discussion we just had, however, was a letter of support contingent upon some specific details about the pool. So that's,
I'm not sure we have enough information to write any letters right now.
Yes.
And somehow the school district's got to be brought into this.
Yeah.
And either they've got to write a letter in support of that also in conjunction with us for a pool that they would end up operating, maintaining or something, because that's certainly not something I think we want to do.
So you have a special meeting on Monday, March 4th, a joint meeting with the school district board. We'll talk about issues of mutual interest, and this will be one of them. So you'll have the opportunity to speak directly with your board members at that meeting. One thought I've had is the NPRSA boundaries follow the school district boundaries. And that is I don't know what you call it legally, but it's a weak park district. It doesn't have much powers or taxing authority or anything. But one thought is you could go to the voters and for all 3 cities, for district-wide, and you could ask the voters to beef it up to a metro district. And then that metro district could do both capital and O&M. So that's one idea to fund a pool that fits the boundaries of our school district.
And one of the problems that I've seen with that is that if it's not in that city, they don't want to vote for it, and they don't want it on the ballot, and they won't. So if the pool's not in Buffalo, Buffalo's not going to support it.
But
If
yeah,
the pool's not in Woodinville, Woodinville's not going to support it. And you need the support.
so if you put it at Wayne,
Yeah.
then you'd have the support of Bothell and Kenmore, and we drown out Woodinville.
And I don't think that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
no pun intended, said the pool, of course.
And Snohomish County is also part of they're on the NPRC thing too. So you have a lot of entities to pull together.
Yeah.
I'll get more information from Dembowski as to how much money and how it can be used.
Deborah, did you have a point? Or no?
No, I mean, I think they've basically been covered, so I think I'm good now.
So,
I basically heard 8 million.
Is that right?
Available.
Available, $8 million.
Oh, I did have a tiny point, sorry. The tiny point was before our meeting with, the district, is there any way to get more clarification from Dombrowski about kind of the,
Switches.
yeah, well, but,
And you know
I
what?
mean,
You
before,
have
in
a-
terms of timing, that's all I'm saying.
You have a dinner
Yeah.
meeting scheduled with him on January 20th.
Oh, right, okay, so we.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah, going back to M and O though, if we are getting into the business of having anything to do with M and O, we probably need a new dedicated fund stream. Yes. We don't have room in our general fund for that, so we would have to figure out some other way to fund ongoing maintenance, I think, because this is, I don't think people quite realize the cost we're talking about with a pool. Like, it's $8 million is nice, but that's probably dropping the bucket when it comes to the construction. M and O is gonna be a whole other level of discussion, which is why we all need to be partnering together to really make this work.
do we know
Right,
how
and
much
I was
we're gonna list on pool?
I was concerned we wouldn't be involved in M&O, but there'd be another.
Yeah, well,
Take
somebody else.
over running the pool and operating the thing, right?
Yeah.
well,
Because I don't want to be involved.
Along those lines, there is a model that's starting to prove itself, and that is the public entity builds the community center or the pool, and the YMCA takes it over completely. That's happening in Sammamish, Gig Harbor.
Shoreline's looking out for their pool.
But then you need to be a YMCA member?
Yeah, but maybe you could have an arrangement saying, hey, look, we built your pool for you, so you gotta allocate this much time for high school sports. And in Gig Harbor, you know, the city of Gig Harbor chipped in $250,000 for the pool. And that gives every Gig Harbor resident one free visit to the YMCA once a month for 20 years.
that's actually a lot of.
So-
Yeah.
No, once a quarter, I'm sorry, once a quarter. Every Gig Harbor resident gets to visit the YMCA once a quarter for 20 years.
And you have to stay in the shallow area.
Yeah.
It's like gym membership, most people don't go, so that's why it works.
Weight lift sessions over 20 years. It's like-
But one other thing to look at is therapeutic access and get the Evergreen Hospital District involved.
Yeah,
And so
there you go.
there's a number of people that will rely on swimming pool for therapeutic exercise. And, you know, you get Evergreen involved, they get some hours and we get some money.
In the school district's comp plan, do they talk about a pool at all? Or are they just completely content relying on like Washington School District's family pool?
Good point, I don't know.
Okay. I mean,
Except for the remark.
I think we should ask the question.
Yeah, the remark of the superintendent, right, that she believed it was criminal,
Criminal is the word.
well, right, but
right, that there was no pool, but yeah. as far
But they
as
haven't been
land-
talking about as far as like, they're looking at capital bonds and that sort of thing, and it's not part of that discussion as far as I know, so.
So it's a misdemeanor.
How serious
it's not
is
a
it?
felony.
The art center is more important than the pool.
So, I'm looking at our time, so we're about 15 minutes over, which is fine. We can keep going on this, but I'm hearing also some agreements about the letter, more information. And also though, you have some meetings set up, seem to be nicely coordinated. This discussion probably could inform some agenda items in that meeting, those meetings, if you will, so. Okay. So let's take a break and come back. You know, the
Exactly.
agenda, city issues.
Yes, in your-